All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we have special guest Kira with us. She is an HR specialist professional, has her own business, and we were just chatting up a little bit before this. So I will go ahead and let you just kind of do your own little intro, whatever it is that you want to say, and then we can go ahead and just dive in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. My name is Kira. I'm a little nasally. I don't always sound like this, but I own Paradigm Consulting, which is a people operations consulting company that's primarily geared towards small businesses and making HR and HR strategy accessible for smaller teams. So, what I always tell people is that we have to follow the same laws, whether you have one employee or five or 5,000. So, it's really important to make sure you're armed with the information that you need to make sure you're staying compliant because we really want small businesses to be able to succeed. But I think what really drew me to our conversation, or where Emily and I were chatting on threads about, was the leadership and management side of owning, running a business, owning a small business, having a small team, showing up for your team members, showing up for yourself, things like that. And all of those things end up getting kind of lumped together the way that we see HR, where it should be beneficial for the employee and for the business. There's no reason that you should have to choose. So, yeah, that's where I come from. And that's sort of my main philosophy, which I think we have a lot in common. So, I'm excited to chat today.
And I would
I'm
just
super excited for this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just say, for all the business owners listening, just because you are a business owner does not make you a leader or an expert in HR. So please hire the
Oh,
people.
she's hitting it today. She's coming right out the gate. Jesus. All right.
So please hire the experts that can help you to stay legal. There are so many cases, even on threads, like we connected on threads, even on threads that I see where businesses owners are just running like wild, wild west, down to like the DMs they slide into you, down to the way that they operate their team. And I would love to hear, like, what are some of the examples that you see where they just completely disregard HR because they're a small business owner?
I it's funny because before we started recording, you guys said we're not going to edit. And so I'm like, okay, let's be careful here because I could go on a full on tangent about some of the things that I've seen. But what I will say is that start like to kind of kick off and not be super judgy or anything. You're not supposed to know all of this HR stuff. Like when you dreamed of starting your own business, or when you started to think about, wow, I really need to start my own business to get away from whatever the hell I'm doing over here in this corporate world, or however you started, you're not really supposed to know what I've been learning for almost 15 years. Like you're not supposed to know any of this stuff. You're not supposed to know the nuance of it, the laws, anything like that. So it's really interesting when small business owners get a little bit defensive when they don't know something, because when we're approaching it in a way that's like, hey, just so you know, you can't pay an employee on a retainer of $150 a month. Like there's a ton of laws that are going to prevent us from doing that, not just minimum wage, but also how they're classified and blah, 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 blah. It's not like you're supposed to know how to do this. It's literally in a place of like, this might be something that you have a blind spot about that nobody else is going to tell you, because you're probably going to hire your lawyer and you're probably going to hire your accountant, but they don't know HR law either. And that's literally why big businesses, or even mid-sized businesses, have an HR department, a legal department, and a finance department. Because while we all hold hands and work really well and cohesively together, I'm not supposed to know how you're supposed to do your taxes, and you're not supposed to know how you're supposed to classify your employees and lead them. So I think it's really interesting that HR of all things is just as complicated, if not more so, and affects every single minute of every single day of your business if you have a team, whether contractors or employees. But we think we're supposed to know how to do all of it. Like, that's a crazy expectation to set for yourself. Like, I don't know how to do all the things you're an expert at. Why would you expect to know all the things that I built my business on? Like, it's just such an interesting conversation that I think, just because you said we could be unfiltered, like, I just want to throw it out there. Like, first of all, here's your one excuse. You're not supposed to know all this. But also, that's an accountability that you have as a business owner, because these are laws. Like, they're not going to, most of the time, if you get penalties for HR, they're not going to ask you what went wrong. They're just going to say, here's your penalty. And they're going to say, I didn't know. And it's going to be like, well, when you signed up for that LLC and you got that employee, you signed up to know. And I think that that's important to kind of get out of the way first, but not in a threatening way, in a calm, like nice, like approachable, like, here's your excuse, but now you've heard it. Now you know, like, let's move on and talk about like what we really need to do to make sure you're protecting yourself, your business, and your team.
I love this because I feel like there's the whole realm of like I don't know what I don't know, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's built that way, and I'm gonna get on my Bob Proctor soapbox because I always do. But one of the things that he says, I listened to his book, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he says in there is like, I've got these new employees right now that, think that they're good at everything. And like they don't know what they're not good at, and I'm gonna have to help them to see what they're not good at. Like we have it's almost like you've got two lanes, right? Like you've got the shit you're naturally fucking good at and just like stay in your lane, right? Like the things that you're not good at, the things that you don't want to do, the things that don't light you up, you're not meant to know. You're not meant to like if you were, you would be the HR professional, right? Or you would
Mm-hmm.
be the financial person. But like, gag me with a spoon when it comes to finances, right? Like, I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't want to know more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. That's like the first thing that you bring up is like, it's fine if you don't know because you're not supposed to. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that also goes back to like, or goes leads into like the healing journey, right? If anyone's been on their fucking healing journey, like you get really defensive about things when you're like first starting out and you feel like you should know or you should whatever, or we like stuck something in the wound, right? Like it's fine if you don't know things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's really like when if and when you do start to feel defensive about stuff, like we should want to lean into that and figure out why it feels that way. Even when I am training managers, I'm like, if there's something that like is grating against you when one of your employees asks you a question or you feel like you're like, oh God, I don't want to talk about that subject, like table it, jot it down, and like bring it to me as your manager. And let's like figure out how we can smooth that over or how we can soften those sharp edges or what education you might need so that you feel like you can deliver the right answer or just give you permission to say, you know what, that's not in my ballpark. And I understand that you need some support with that. Why don't I help you go and get yourself resourced in that area without being embarrassed or ashamed or anything like that? If we spend all of our time trying to know all the answers, then we're going to be a jack of all trades, a master of none. And that's not really going to help us in business.
I agree 100%.
Amen. A whole other side of leadership right there in a lot of words. Especially with the resources, right? It's you don't as a leader, you don't have to fix everything, but if you can direct them to the resources, provide them the resources, and actually listen and not listen to respond, it's a completely different shift. There have been so many times in my career where as a leader, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. And we figured it out every single time. Same thing in business, I feel is the same way.
Yeah, it's definitely like I feel like it's an exciting moment when one of my employees comes to me and they're like, "Hey, we're hitting this obstacle with our clients." Like we have over 100 clients that have gone through our signature service. And now like I think it's our 108th client that we're like, "Oh my gosh, like we're having this friction point with the last like 5, 6, 7 clients." Some of that has to do with timing where we are in the world. The clients we're working with are totally different in 2025 than 2021, that kind of a thing. But it's just so if we're open to change and welcoming those like weird, awkward conversations, then beautiful things can come from it. Cause it was just one kind of critical conversation with an employee about our services that was like, I don't feel like our clients in this particular case are walking away from our 90-day service knowing exactly what to do with their team members. I feel like there's something we can provide them to help bridge the gap that we're not doing. And like, maybe young, immature me would have been maybe someone that doesn't trust myself or prior to the healing, like I think we'll probably tap into, might have been like, whoa, our shit's perfect. Like, don't do that, where really it's like was able to kind of approach it and be like, actually, you're so right. Like, I want to stay focused on what we're good at, stay in our lane, but also what can we do to like help that transition of them going from starting a team to managing a team? Like, what is something we can add in that is easy and tangible? And like, how can we get creative? We're the experts. We've worked with all these people. And like that conversation ends up leading into so much more growth for the employee, but also for our business and the product that we're actually putting out in the world. We're like able to refine it in such a unique way if you're open to that kind of thing. And I feel like just cultivating an environment where people feel comfortable saying like, hey, your thing that you created that you're so prideful about has a little bit of a missing piece. Like, not it sucks, but like, let's make it awesome. And that approach is like so hard to find in an employee, but it's even harder to find in a culture. So I'm kind of proud of that they feel like they can come to me and say that, and me not be like, what the hell? Our signature service is perfect in every way. Like, go do your job. Bye. Like, it's like, okay, this is going to be more work, but yeah, I think the transformation is going to be awesome for our clients that are going to need this.
And that is true leadership, right? It's being open, it's being that way. And I go back to, I'm laughing because as business partners, we have definitely had those moments of like, okay, this is what I think, this is what I think. And now we also know how to navigate that with each other. But it didn't happen overnight. We've had so many conversations and
Yeah.
so many of uncomfortable of like, you're really triggering this in me right now. I'm going to step back and take a few moments and then I'll be back and then we're going to talk through it. But that growth in itself, like the communication side has been huge. Go ahead, Julia.
So
You got
many
something
things
you want
we
to
could talk
say.
about with that alone. So many things. Because if you know human design, Emily is a manifester and I'm a projector.
I'm a
And
manifester.
okay. Okay. So if you want a business partner, you need to find yourself a projector. Because manifestors typically, and Emily can speak into this better than I can, obviously, but manifestors are very much like the high visionary, the I'm gonna do shit my way, and I'm like, I don't know, it's kind of like their own little bubble, own little world, right? And like projectors, we just kind of sit back and we like see everything. And she's always like, I'm so glad that you're so go with the flow and that I can bring you anything. Like she'll have 50 million ideas and she'll be like, I don't know what's for the business and what's not. And I'm like, okay, let's talk through it. Right. And I'll be like, no, that's not ours. That's no, we're not touching that with a 75-foot pole. Like give it to someone else. Or was it just last week? Like she had this brilliant fucking idea and we met with someone about it and the ball's like rolling on it. And then she's like, man, I'm just not sure if this is really for us. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it. I'm like 100% it's for us, but let's talk about it. So I think picking a business partner it's huge. Like it's akin to like being married to someone, right? I mean, it's helpful that we're best friends, but we didn't start out that way. And we've had a lot of growing pains along the way. So yeah, if that's a route that you're interested in taking, like I'm not gonna say like choose wisely, but yeah, choose wisely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so interested in that relationship because we've worked with, I'll just be blunt, like in any situation where we've worked with partners, whether they were married or friends, there's been a dissolution. It's very rare that we see like an HR gets pulled into a lot of those conversations, especially at the level that we are. Like we usually work directly with the founders. So we end up being a advisory for not only how they're running their team, but also like how they're developing their business structure. And so it's always interesting to me because the benefit of having a business partner, like I've been thinking about this over the past few days, even just like it's not appropriate for me to go to my team with like my fears and concerns and worries. It's okay for me to go to my therapist. It's okay for me to go to my coach, but it's not okay for me to go to my team with that, even though a lot of times it feels like we're all in it together. Like my role is to protect them from the concerns and fears and worries about the business overall so that they can stay focused on what they're doing. And I've just thought so many times about how nice it would be to have somebody that's like just as in it and just as devoted and just as nervous and like a nightmare, like wreck entrepreneur staying up all night, worried about shit that as I am, because then you could be like, it's a different level of honesty that I feel you guys must have with each other that solo business owners don't always get to experience. And with community and relationships being like such a key component of life and leadership, like I'm just so interested in how you guys have been able to navigate that and like the benefits that you've been able to reap, I guess, because we sometimes hear the bad stories about partnership, but I've just been recently thinking like, oh my gosh, like the benefits of having that person in your corner must be like, it must feel so good. So I think kind of might be cool for you guys to brag about it a little bit so that people that are thinking about that might be swayed in that direction versus, on my podcast, I've had episodes where people are like, well, I had a partnership come on and they were like, don't do it. Like they were still partners at the time. And they're
A
like,
lot of people
don't
say
get a
that.
partner. Like whatever you do, don't get a partner. But I've never actually had the conversation of like, maybe you should. Like there are benefits that I can see from my perspective now. So what do you guys think? I mean, no, I know this is your podcast, but I'm like, what do you guys think about
No,
that?
this is,
Like,
I love it. I love it. I was like, hey,
what are
this
some
is how you
of
want
the
to spend your
unseen
time with us. It's
benefits
fine.
of business partnership that we should talk about?
So I will just say one thing. This is just confirmation that I need to make the post that I've been wanting to make. And the post was going to be like, fuck you and all of your opinions that told us not to do it and that we
We've
could
had
not do it.
so many people, like
Wow.
personal friends, come in and tell. Like I've had several personal friends be like, yeah, I don't think Emily is really for you. And I don't think that like
Oh,
your guys' business together is like really what it, and I'm like, okay, like
personal.
you can keep your opinion to yourself. Like that's cool. I didn't say shove it up your ass. I kind of wanted to some degree to some of
Mm-hmm.
them, but
Yeah.
I was like, and we just had this conversation pretty recently too. Cause like I've had a couple people and she's had at least one person. I don't know if you want to, I would love for you to share that story. I don't know if you want to, but
That story, yeah, definitely gets to be shared. That one was really interesting. So I was working with someone and they were like a spiritual advisor, whatever you want to call them, healer, whatever, call it whatever the fuck you want to call it. But when we did like this whole like deep inner like intuitive thing, and she was like, yeah, like I just don't think that you guys are in alignment. Like I think the reason why your business is like not growing or it's stagnant is it's because of Julie. And I was like, the fuck? Like, what? And it took me a minute. And then after breaking away from her and all like the healing modality and the bullshit and whatever, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I also had a really close friend. I won't mention her names, but Julie will know. She had said something similar, and I'm like, why? Like, this is not making sense. And then later, when those people are no longer in my life, it's like, oh, they were just there to plant, the seeds of doubts for us to, strengthen that. I now always say, and I will always say this, is Julie has been the biggest growth in my life in a good way, from communication, slowing the fuck down, my manifestor chaos style. If there's someone that can ride the chaos, it is her. Shout out to her, because manifestors, we get very chaotic and we can be like sprint and the world is on fucking fire. When I'm in a sprint, the world is on fucking fire. And
oh my God, it drives me nuts sometimes because I'm like, not everything is an emergency just because you're an expert. I love you, but no.
so, but I will say that I would say that probably the biggest thing that helped us get here was a lot of communication and a lot of giving each other space, and human design was huge when we understood, okay, I'm a manifestor, she's a projector, this is how she works. I very much like in a sprint I can work tons and then I need a break. She doesn't work that way, and so it's
Not at all.
respecting that. At first I was like, the fuck you mean you don't work that way? Like you don't just like sit up and knock this shit out. And also like the way she structures her day is very different. Like we're like yin and yang in so many ways. And all the way down to like, I'm directing to the point, no bullshit. I don't give a fuck. Like that's how I roll. Julie's got more the softer side, and like, and she's like, yes, as a team dynamic. And I'm like, just give me one person that reports into me and I'm gonna, go that direction. You keep everything else running. But it
Yeah.
allows me the space and the time to work what I'm really good at, like the strategy, the big vision, to play in spaces that I would have never played in had I been the only business owner. Like had I had to worry about everything, she allows me that. And then on calls, we all know, like I'm the starter, she's the finisher. So we structure things that way. So I think if you're looking for a business partner, you don't look for someone that's exact the same, but how do you like complement each other? And
Mm-hmm.
definitely do look into human design and how human design works. I personally know as a manifestor, I work great with projectors. I seem to attract a lot of projectors into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then generators kind of hit or miss, you know.
Yeah. I feel like there's a certain, like, I'm a manifester too. And that's the thing, is that like I can get a project or an idea like all the way up until a certain point, and then it feels like torture to try to continue it. So I feel like I've kind of structured my team in that way, where I like front load a lot of our like client work and strategy, and then they like carry the project to the end. But I can imagine that there are some things that just kind of fall flat, that don't really get to have to come to fruition, that have nothing to, there's no one on my team assigned to do those projects in my head that are moving the business forward. So that's where I've been like, well, is this, and you know, as a team builder by nature, like building organizational structures, I'm like, what hire is this that like I need to like pick up my ideas and run with it? It's not my assistant, although she's doing great, but like, and she fills her role. And as a manifestor, you should definitely get one. But like realistically, there's this like person that I'm like, what role is that? And there's no equivalent in like the employee world, because the burden of the idea, the burden of the investment, the burden of the time, like all of that is a CEO problem. So I'm not trying to like hire an employee to then burden with all my own shit. So that's where I've been kind of like, God, it would have been really nice to have somebody else that was like on my same level that could kind of pick up where I'm leaving off. And like when I try to put myself in that projector position, or that like finish the project, like make sure it look, you know, I can't even explain like what Julie does. Like I would love to hear how she would pick up your ideas and run with them. But like I can, it's like a dream, you know? So, but I can imagine that those like communication skills are, you're literally signing up to have to communicate every single day in a marriage with someone that's really, really different from you. So like what a stretch that
Yeah.
would be.
I mean, we've had several instances where, so I would say the first thing with like the finishing of the projects, if you look at the gates in human design, and if I was looking at my chart, I could tell you what the numbers were, but like I do co-working meetings with a manifesting generator because that's helpful for me as a projector. I need her energy for that kind of stuff. And she has the gate of beginnings and I have the gate of like endings and finishing things. And
Mm,
so we pair really, really well. Like we, you know, Emily and I can't do co-working meetings together. It's not her jam, it's not her thing. Um, the other thing is like I allow her and encourage her to play in like we like to call it the land of Delulu, right? But like I'm just like, yes, let's do that. Let's like, right? And so, but I also have like this really like problem solving is my fucking jam. So you give me problems and I'm like, whether she's coming to me to vent or for advice or whatever, and that's a rule we had to implement was like, hey, if we're coming to the other one, we either openly say, I'm just venting, I need advice, or I need support, and it looks like this. Because if not, my problem solving ass is going to go straight to problem solving. And if that's not what she's open to in that moment, it can get kind of hairy, right?
yeah.
So communication, we've had to learn how to communicate, like what are each other and processing. How do we process information and how do we move through things? Because she processes like she can process shit in her sleep. And me, no, especially if it's emotional. If it's emotional, I give me 3 to 5 business days and I'll get back to you. Like I need time to step away, be in my own energy, and to move through this, right? And so it's very much learning those nuances, it being okay. But hey, we have a weekly meeting every week where we like go through task items and all this stuff, right? And one week, and this is like my favorite story to tell. One week, I think it was around my last birthday. And I just was going through this like death and rebirth. It was like it was a real heavy one. And we come together on the call and she's over here like Miss fucking Mary Poppins, like I'm setting intentions and this is what I want the meeting to go and da 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 da. What's your intention? And I'm like, I don't have a fucking intention. Like I'm here. That's the best that you're gonna get right now. Like I'm here. Like I am 16 fucking feet in deep in it right now. And she's like you could literally see, like you could feel her energy like come back in, close off. She like moved back a little bit on the screen.
Oh.
And she's just like, do we need to reschedule? And I'm like, nope, because I have no idea when this is going to end. Like, it could be in 2 minutes, it could be in 2 fucking months. I don't know. So, for us to be able to be that open and honest and vulnerable, like, it helps that we both do a lot of self development work, right? Like, literally every single day we're doing, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, right? But the fact that we both are doing the work, I could not work with someone that's not doing the work. And we will never have someone on our team that's not doing the work. And I think Emily feels the same way. It makes dating and relationships much more interesting too. But so I think that's
Posting
like,
currently.
yeah. But
But no,
that's like one of the, like, communication has been fucking huge, and like doing the work and being honest, right? Like, there's something to say about there's honesty, but then there's radical honesty. And when you, because have you ever met the people that they think they're honest and you're like, they're fucking lying to themselves and they don't even know it, right?
Mhm.
Like, so that's my soapbox about the finding a business partner and what it takes, because like sometimes we're just fucking, we're going through it, but and it's very cool the way that we operate, because it's like when she's on, if I'm not on, it's okay because she's got it, right? And it's like when I feel like I'm dropping the ball, like she's there to scoop it up and run with it for the team. So whether it's getting back to a client or it's moving a project forward or whatever, or if it's like earlier today, I fucking hit a wall and I'm like, I am tired as fuck. She's like, do you need to rest? Like, and she's very, very good at being like, if not that you need it, but if you need permission to like take a break or take some downtime or whatever, like do that, right? And so it's really also being able to honor like the season that we're in as a human in the business and in our personal growth and journey. And just, we look at all the things. We look at like, personal cycles. We look at astrology. I'm like, I can't wait for Mars to go direct in 2 days. Like literally, I'm like, come on, my projector ass needs some more energy. Like, let's get show on the road, Mars. Like, let's go. So
Yeah. How do you deal with like conflict? Like, do you ever have issues where you're both like, I mean, I can only imagine like Emily's like, I have this incredible idea. And you're like, we are not doing that. Like, is like so out of left field. Like, that's not going to work. Like, how do you deal with that? Cause I know as a manifester, that can be like the worst feeling, to feel like tamped down or like just kind of like, oh, I've gotten myself all worked up about this thing and I'm in the zone. And then, like, have you ever had conflict where, or talk to me a little bit about those moments where Julie, you can like see clearly like this isn't going to work, and, and Emily's a little bit more like, no, I'm like really amped about this. Like, I really want to do it. Like, let's go forward. Like, let me just try. I'll do it on my own. Like, how do you deal with conflict like that? Do you have like an agreement that you have to make to move forward with certain things, like 100% in on both sides? Is there an experimentation phase? Like, how do you deal with it?
So I will say early on, I would literally go to the gym every time I would go work out, and I would just have downloads, like fucking downloads of business. I'm like, we can do this, 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 this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were going in 40,000 different directions. One week it was this idea, next week it was this idea. Like it was just pure chaos. So Julie, being the organizer that she is and the space holder, I think it was her idea. She's like, okay, all of the ideas now go in a spreadsheets. And then when in the spreadsheet, then you come back to see if the idea is still there. Because I was in the cycle of the idea felt really fucking great. And then 2 days later, I'm like, no, I don't really like that idea anymore. And I also pick up a lot of energy from different people. So I would go to networking events and I would have like 50,000 different ideas. I'm like, those aren't all mine because I can't even execute half of them. So then it became a process for me to use discernment, right? And use the same process for decision making. We would go in meetings and I would make the decision felt really good in the moment. I would say yes, we would move on. And then the next 2 days, I'm like, yeah, that shit was out of alignment. And I don't know how I missed that. But that went back to me like tapping into my human design. And now the rule is takes 24 to 48 hours for me to make a decision. Julie's process is different, right? So when we go to make business decisions, I give myself that 24 to 48 hours, especially on investments. Ideas now, I feel like I keep them in a spreadsheet and I'm more aligned to that. I could still like have creative ideas. I could probably start 30,000 different businesses in a day if I could like physically do it. But I go back to like mission and vision, like where are we headed? And I've had to really ground in like, what is the impact transformative leadership is going to be making? How are we impacting? And then Julie's like the sounding board. I'm like, so is this an alignment for our business, or is this just another idea that just dropped in somewhere? But she's never been like, no, we are not doing that. Like, I don't remember a time where she's been like, no, absolutely not. Usually if I say it, she goes, girl, yes, let's go run with it. Like 100%, even on personal life, I'm like, I'm about to do this. She's like, girl, yes, sign up, go for it. And then I'm halfway through and I'm like, I thought you said this was a good idea. Like, what happens? But yeah, she's always down for that. However, I've had to really fine tune the manifester vibe to, but at the same time, it's also been a gift because when somebody comes to me, especially coaches, they're like, I want to start a group coaching program. I'm like, oh, I can have that mapped out in 30 minutes and just map it out, like structure, strategy, and all of that. So yeah, you kind of learn how to fine tune those things.
Yeah. The interesting thing about us is like her authority is emotional. So that's why she has to take that step back and give 24 to 48 hours. So when we're on a call with someone and we're looking to make some type of investment or work with someone or whatever, I have a splenic authority, which means in the moment. I know right now, right? So I will sit on it and I will hold it, and then I have to be like, bitch, initially it was this. You don't get to flip flop, right? Like your spleen is telling you in the moment what it is, right? So I'll hold it, I'll sit with it, and I'll let her have. Sometimes she'll ask me, she'll be like, how do you feel about it? And I'll be like, do you want to wait, or do you want me to, until you figured out where you're at, or do you want me to tell you? And then she'll, feel into, does it feel, good in the moment? But I think we've just kind of always had this unspoken slash spoken rule that if it is not a hell yes for both of us, if one of us is like, it's a no for me, then it's a no, period. And we move on. And we've just always operated that way. That
Yeah, if it's not a
Yeah.
fuck yes, we're not doing it. Like,
yeah. And if one of us is not on board, then we just don't. And it's never been like, well, let me try and convince you, right?
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
I think it's
ask.
it's just like this level of respect that we have for each other. And it's like, but we also fully know and believe and trust that like whatever's meant for us will never pass us by. Whether the universe has to hit us in the head with it 15 fucking times before we get the picture, that's cool. Like it'll do what it needs to do. But we've really gotten good at like trusting where we're at, trusting like if one of us doesn't feel grounded, or if one of us is like, not so sure about this, right? Like if it's a little bit flaky, it's like, okay, so you go off and you do whatever your process is to figure out with your discernment what that is. I've gotten up and I have sway tested on calls before. Like she's messaged me and she'd be like, hey, do you want to sway test on that? I'm like, yep, already on it.
Oh,
So
wow, cool.
we've done things like that before too. Um, so it's literally like we just use the tools that are in the tool belt.
Mm. Yeah, I was wondering if there was ever like because I know like if I feel something like deep in my gut, I'm like, I have to do like this is exactly what I have to do. Like if you guys have ever had a moment where one of you was in that mode, because it's rare, I think, where you're like, this is the right decision. Like I feel it with my whole body. And then the other's like, nah. And then you're like, what do you do with that energy? I was kind of wondering if you guys have ever been, but it sounds like you're just not, you haven't really had that, like where one person was like so
I think it's because
passionately.
I'm so go with the flow. Like I think it used to drive her fucking nuts. I'm so go with the flow that I'm just like, sure, let's try it. Right. Like, but
Mm,
I also have a 3-5 profile line. So I learned through experience. And so I'm like, I'm almost always up for something, like whatever
yeah.
it is. Like,
Yeah. Wow. Okay, wait, I have a question for you guys. So I'm reading this book, and again, hijacking your podcast. But I'm
It's
reading this
all
book,
good.
and I think it's called like Here in the Moment or something. But anyway, this woman goes on a plane, and Here One Moment by Leanne Moriarty. It's a fiction book. She's on this plane, and she's this older lady, and she basically is like walking by and like pointing to the people on the plane with their age of death and cause of death. So it's like 19 car accident, and then the next person in the row, and then the next person in the row. And she goes through the whole plane. And like, obviously, the book is unfolding, like what happens with these people or whatever, but it's seeming like it's coming true so far. So if you could know like your age of death and cause of death, would you? Like, would you be a person that would want to know that in advance, or would you want it to be a mystery? Like, I'm just like, I feel like this says so much about people. Like, when I got home last night, I asked my husband after being with my friends, and he was like, let me guess. Like, Lauren said this, Jessica said this, Flo said this. Like, and he could just like, it was just like really funny. And he's like, and you were in the middle. And I was like, pretty much. But like, I just am so curious, like, what people will say to that, especially like I guess also even for human design. Like, I'm wondering if certain human designs would always be drawn to like wanting to know those answers or not. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I personally don't. Death is also not something that scares me because I don't really care. I feel like I'm a soul here. I'm going to constantly be evolving. Now, I would love to make it clear that I don't really want to come back into a human life again. So, Julie, we're not signing up for that for the next round.
Amen to
Just
that.
but no, like I personally would not want to know. I always feel like, death is something that I view very differently. And maybe because I've died and rebirthed 40,000 times, too many times to count, in my life. And I kind of go back, being born and raised in the Amish culture, and just having like death
Wow.
be something like held over your head of like, if you don't do this, if you don't wear these socks, you're going to burn in hell after you die. So there was always like this fear around death. And then when I went to the spiritual route and I understood like death and your soul and the evolution, which Julie was also a huge, huge part of that process. But that completely shifted the way I see it. And now I'm just like, no, I'm good. I mean, I'll go skydiving, and if I die, I die. I'm gonna get on a plane. If it crashes, it crashes. It was meant my time. Like, take care of my
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
I'm 100% the same. I don't want to know. I don't care to know. I had a teacher, my French teacher in high school, and we went on this trip to France, and she was a palm reader apparently, which we didn't know made her even fucking weirder than she already was. But I remember she read my palm. I was like 16, right? And she read my palm and said what age I was gonna die or whatever. She did it for my aunt too. My aunt remembers this. I don't fucking remember. I was probably like, all right, crazy ass dead boys, like whatever. Um, I don't fucking care to know. I don't care to know. Like if I'm not meant to be in this body past this next hour, then so be it. Like I'll hit it up in the next life, right? And that's just my personal belief. But I'm like, whatever, then obviously I'm not meant to be here any longer, and I'm totally cool with it. Like,
Yeah. I mean, you can't control it anyway.
right. And I personally I wouldn't want to, because I'm also an overthinker and a ruminator. Like, I ruminate so much sometimes. I'm like, bitch, you're doing it again. Um, but I wouldn't want it to be one of those things that I'm like ruminating on it, right? Or I'm
Hmm.
constantly thinking about it because I'm not gonna be able to change it anyways.
Right.
So why even know? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if it were an option to be like, do you want to know? Like, I would choose no. But if somebody told me, I would be like, okay, like now I can see how I might reverse engineer that knowledge into like having the best possible experience and like leaving the best possible legacy, I guess. But my friend that has kids was like, well, no, like I would never want to know that because I have kids and I don't want, like, I can't even imagine. I would just be thinking about it all the time, blah, blah, blah. But I don't have kids. So I feel like it's like less emotional in that way. Where I was like, yeah, but wouldn't you want to like give the best? And also, like, my dad passed away when I was 20. So in my mind, I'm like, it would have been so great to know, like, if, you know, if you have the choice to like give your kids an experience of like I'm writing, if it's in 2 years, like you're writing them letters that they can read while they're growing up, or, you know, like things like that. So I don't know. I feel like it could go both ways, but I was just, I think it says a lot about, like, I feel like I know you guys better just by like knowing that answer. And the fact that you agree on it is like probably one of the reasons that you can come from such different places and like land in the same decision making process and like find agreement and stuff. Because what if you were like on totally opposite ends? Like that is like two totally different life philosophies.
It's kind of funny because we're normally on completely opposite ends of things, like
Yeah.
from the type of people that we date to the types of things that we, I don't know, like that's a really great example for us.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, tell me more.
Dating, music, the way listen, I'm savage and ratchet, and I will like put on some Chris
all
Brown
day
some real
long.
quick. Probably was black in another lifetime. So like knowing that and the way that I move, even when we go out, it's always interesting because she's like chatty Cathy, like everybody loves her. And I'm just over here like, don't fucking bother me. Unless you super hot, you got something to bring to the table, don't bother me. Like I'm just
Like
not
the
gonna.
best story is one time we were out, they do first day Fridays in St. Pete, or first Fridays. And so like the first Friday of the month, it's like a big ass block party. And so we went out for a first Friday, and she saw some guy that had something on his t-shirt. I don't even remember what it was, but she was like, "Oh my God, da da da." Do you want to tell that part of the story? Because I don't even remember what it was.
It was something crazy on this t-shirt, and I was like, "Oh my goodness! Like that t-shirt. Did you see that t-shirt?" And she turns around and didn't you get a picture with it?
I guess I did.
I would have
She
just
had
kept it
like a
moving.
she had like a friend or something that had either just talked about that thing or was like looking for that as a I don't even fucking know. But so whatever it was, I'm like, dude, that's so cool. And then she tells me about this, how it had just come up in whatever with her, and I'm like, I'm gonna be right back. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. I like flip off and I go, I'm like, hey, that's a really cool t-shirt. And da, 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 da. Can I get a picture?
Yeah, that's something she would do. Yeah. Or make friends with someone and hang out with them all night. And meanwhile, I'm like, are you serious right now? Like you don't know them? Like, but it's always an adventure. Like that's the thing. It's always an adventure. Every one of my friends that I have do this same thing for me. I don't know if that's like a manifestor vibe where we just don't vibe like that. But
Yeah. My best friend, the one that I was saying earlier, that was telling me like, well, it's going to be great for your throat chakra. Like, I think she might be a projector. I'm going to ask her right after this because I kind of forgot. But she's like the type where she like meets a guy in the front of the mall on the night of our New Year's Eve party where we're having like a murder mystery party, and he has like a big crystal around his neck, and she's like, and he was like, you know, trying to get people to sign a petition for Greenpeace, and she's like, can I bring a friend to the close friends dinner party that I just met in front of the mall? And I'm like, well, is he hot? Are you into him? Like, what's the deal? And she's like, no, not at all. Like, just really love his energy. Like, think he would bring a lot of, and then we meet the guy and he's like such a weirdo. And we're all just kind of like, I appreciate your message. Like, we think what you do is awesome. Like, but just totally out of left field. Like, you know, like somebody where she's like, yeah, that wasn't the best choice I've made, because then she has to deal with this weird guy all night. But
I
it's like
feel
so great because she always has all these friends. She's always in all these random people's weddings. Like she's just this person that just kind of like, you just never know who Flo's going to be hanging out with. She's like so incredible and amazing and like such a creative. And then, you know, it's just like kind of a funny thing because I'm like the skeptic and I'm like, okay, like, but it's like the perfect balance, I feel.
I feel like that's only half of what I would do. Like. I would not do all of that. The like randomly bringing him to a close friend, nah, no, like,
She's very much like the
mm-mm.
more the merrier, right, guys? And we're like, yeah, sure. And then they come and we're like, that was a mistake. No more the merrier.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
yeah.
I'm definitely not the more the merrier because we've been out with like different, like I brought friends or invited friends to something, and she invited friends, and then those friends invited friends, and we're like, who the fuck is this chick? Like, what the fuck is she doing here? And we just kind of like moved off into our own little pod, and then they fucking migrated with us, and we're like,
Well, because you guys are
what's
the
going on right
leaders.
now? Yeah. We're just, it's so fucking interesting, I guess.
That's crazy. Have you seen a lot of like have you worked with other partners like in your business or anything like that? Have you seen those like, do you feel like there's less evolved partnerships?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
the level of it's always made us come back and appreciate our partnership. Like every time we meet with partners, we're like, oh my goodness, like we can clearly see this one's triggering this one and this one's triggering. Like they're in this cycle. And like they don't have the awareness enough to break out of the cycle and to also understand like you got to respect the way people operate. It literally is a marriage. It's just you don't have no marriage certificate, you're not sleeping with them, right? But it literally is that type of communication, that type of respect, that type of trust. And when it's not there, we have seen where like, oh my goodness, thank goodness that both of us sit and do the work and we make sure that there's not weeds growing in the garden that we're cultivating.
Oh, what a cool analogy.
Yeah, because the weeds will always be there and come up. It's whether you pull the weeds or not. Sometimes, we like to not pull the weeds and then it catches up with us.
That's an interesting dynamic too, I think, because like we'll see something, or Emily be like, oh, I did this thing, like tell me the next time when I do it, right? Or whatever. And so, because a lot of times I'm as a projector, I'll just kind of sit back and like watch it unfold, because I feel like, and how many fucking times I've like given her this piece of advice or told her, yeah, you should do this or you shouldn't do this or whatever, and then it doesn't land, which I get and I appreciate 100%, because if someone tells me to do something, I'm like, even if it was 1,000% the thing I wanted to do, I'm gonna be like, fuck you, I'm gonna do my own thing, right? Like, you're not doing what you told me to do. But then 3 months later, 4 months later, whatever, she'd be like, oh my gosh, so and so said this to me. And I'm like, you mean the thing I said to you 3 months ago? And she's like, oh yeah, right. And so it's also becoming really comfortable with like, I learned really early on, like I'm a seed planter. And like that's right, wrong, or indifferent, love it or hate it. Like that's just part of who I am and how it operates. So you also have to, and I think again, that's why a rule of like advice, support, venting, like what do you need? What's it look like? That was, I think, one of the biggest things that really saved us, because then we were able to, or we are able to just kind of like pull ourselves back and let the other person have whatever they need to have, right? Because there's obviously something that needs to happen, like whether it's an experience or it's going through the motion of something, or we learn through patterns and through repeating things. But yeah, it's just that like sometimes you just gotta be like, all right, let's go sit back. Just go sit back and watch.
Interesting.
Well, we're
Like,
almost at
what other
time.
questions do you have?
We're almost at time. We will put all your stuff in the show notes. Any last questions, advice, or words that you have?
I don't know. I feel like I'm going to like be journaling after this. I feel like it's just such a cool relationship to witness. And I'm just thankful that I know that maybe wasn't our intention of this initial conversation to like share that part of your guys's business building
It goes where it
bond and
goes, man.
stuff. But yeah, I feel like it's just cool that you guys are so open to sharing. And I've never, in all the years of working with sometimes partners like you guys, like I've never had a conversation quite as insightful about this type of thing. Like it's just so interesting. Like I feel like you guys should do more content on it, basically.
We probably should.
Stop the recording now.
Yeah, like women need to be told, like sometimes women need a partner in order to like get these things off the ground because of the societal norms and expectations that we have on us. And I'm all about having women be able to have a seat at the table and find their own path and make their own money. And like, I don't know if maybe if there was more discussion like this about open communication and relationships and partnerships with two women building businesses, then it would give more people more bravery to like start something. And if we're always, to your point in the beginning of the podcast, like if we're always hearing, don't do it, I wouldn't do it if I were you, I've done it and I wouldn't do it again. Like, I don't know, it just might be a really great way to challenge the patriarchy. And maybe that's what's pushing us back from starting things, is we need to sometimes have two of us at the helm that can lean on each other. Like, we are meant to be in community. So I don't know. I just found it really inspirational, and I'm really thankful that you guys shared that with me.
Thank you. We love to push back too. So, you know.
Yeah. No, I didn't pick up on that at all. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, a lot of fun. So thank you for coming. Thank you for, you know, I just love how we always find people on Threads. Like, so many people that we find are on Threads. So I love that. I love the platform. I feel like at this point, Emily should be getting paid by Threads to make connections, but
truly. Truly, it's a really cool platform. Definitely find me there if you're listening or watching. I'd love to connect on there. It's my favorite way to talk to people, because like Instagram's just too much work, honestly.
It is for sure. And so if you guys are looking for someone in the HR field, or if you need some type of support, like please, please, please reach out to Kira, because obviously she's a wealth of knowledge. She knows what she's doing. She understands, like, this HR is her jam, it's her lane, right? Like, she gets it. She's got tons of experience in it. So if you guys need any support in that area, or that, you know, that realm, because it's not a realm that I ever want to dabble in. I was a training manager for a hot minute, and that gets lumped in with HR, right? And I was like, y'all are, nah,
We're here for you. We'll do it.
All right. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.